Before time is up, Titanic discoverer Robert Ballard has confessed something he long kept hidden under the ocean. For years, the man who discovered the world's most infamous shipwreck had secrets darker than rusting steel and shattered crystal chandeliers. What he ultimately confessed doesn't merely redefine how we perceive Titanic, it redefines how we perceive him. This isn't a tale of discovery. It is about confession, legacy, and the deep-sea ghosts. Well before he was the guy who conjured up Titanic, Robert Ballard was just a kid gazing out at the horizon, enthralled by the sea's enigma. He was born in 1942 in Wichita, Kansas, of all locations, landlocked, plains, a world removed from crashing waves and tides, his interest in the sea seemingly absurd. But destiny had other plans. His family eventually relocated to San Diego, where the boundless Pacific lay before him like an open door. The boy who learned about maps and fantasized about adventure was now sitting next to a boundless, mysterious world that would determine his future. Unlike most explorers who fall into history by chance, Ballard was intentional. He chased his calling with unrelenting determination. He learned geology and chemistry at the University of California, Santa Barbara, while also being in the U.S. Army Reserve. He got a master's degree in geophysics, then continued to drill deeper with a doctorate in marine geology and geophysics at the University of Rhode Island. To Ballard, oceans weren't mere water, they were records, containing human history and planetary secrets. But here's what made him different: Ballard did not want to stay crouched over microscopes or writing dusty papers. He wanted to look. He wanted equipment that could descend where a man could not, cameras that could light up worlds beneath suffocating pressure. In the 1970s, as others were happy to examine samples, Ballard was working on robotic submersibles, devising new means to journey into the depths. He became half scientist, half engineer, half showman. And he had a key thing in mind: discovery was for nothing if you couldn't take the world with you along the ride. That showmanship earned him both respect and envy. Some colleagues perceived arrogance. Fans appreciated brilliance. Really, he was both. You don't discover Titanic by being humble. By the early 1980s, Ballard had already rocked biology with the discovery of deep-sea hydrothermal vents, habitats where life existed in the absence of sunlight. But whereas the scientific community cheered, the public hardly paid attention. Ballard yearned for more. He was hungry for a find so iconic that it would leave his name in history. That is when his eyes turned to the Titanic. The vessel had terrorized minds for generations. Missing since April 15, 1912, when it hit an iceberg and sank into the Atlantic carrying 1,500 lives, Titanic was legend, mystery, myth. Treasure hunters salivated to loot it. Filmmakers fantasied lifting it. But the sea is vast and the ship a needle in a haystack. For Ballard, the very idea was the point. Titanic wasn't a wreck, it was a stage. Locate it, and you would not only make history but become history. And Ballard, with all his ambition, charisma, and tenacity, was set on grabbing it. On September 1, 1985, the world was remade, or so the tale was spun. Ballard and his Franco-American crew declared that they had discovered the Titanic, lying 2.5 miles beneath the surface. Newspapers yelled victory. The photographs were stunning: Titanic's prow rising out of the blackness like a specter, railings intact, anchor chain still wrapped. The impossible was accomplished. But what the world didn't know was that this story had shadows. Ballard hadn't set out solely to find Titanic. He was working for the U.S. Navy. Years before the Titanic came into play, the Navy had asked Ballard to do something else: find 2 nuclear submarines that had disappeared mysteriously in the Cold War, USS Thresher, 1963, and USS Scorpion, 1968. The military didn't want leaks, sabotage, even a Soviet plot. Ballard's cutting-edge remote-operated vehicles were ideal for the task. But the Navy couldn't acknowledge what it was undertaking. So Ballard offered a cover: let him look for Titanic afterwards. If he could find it, the press would be riveted by the ship, not by the classified submarine surveys. The Navy accepted. Titanic was a cover for one of the Cold War's most clandestine operations. When Ballard ultimately unveiled this years later, the world was shocked. The great rediscovery wasn't science unadulterated, it turned out, it was mixed up with espionage, nuclear anxieties, and geopolitical strategy. The Titanic, previously a symbol of hubris and disaster, had been rediscovered due to a Cold War deal. But for all the cloak and dagger history, those 1985 photographs sent the world into a shudder. Kids gazed in wonder. Survivors cried. Regular folks were fixated on the rusty grave out there in the deep. Ballard was a celebrity. He wasn't merely a scientist, he was a storyteller, a preacher of the deep, bringing specters into the light through flickering video transmissions. But even so, he bore ambivalence. He had discovered what others were not able to find. But he understood the finding was not as simple as the public might think. It was a secret agreement shrouded in history's largest tragedy. The find unleashed a firestorm. Titanic fever engulfed the globe. Classes learned new things. Book companies issued old survivor tales. Talk shows fought to book Ballard. He was a contemporary adventurer, a Jacques Cousteau for the TV generation. Children wanted to be oceanographers. Science was hip for a while. But fame came with controversy. Ballard maintained Titanic was a graveyard, not a treasure chest. He demanded international protection. Salvagers, however, envisioned profit. Lawsuits burst forth over ownership. Some charged Ballard with hypocrisy. He had exploited Titanic to become famous, yet criticized others for wanting artifacts. Ballard angrily defended himself, "I never brought anything up." To him, the vessel was holy. In the meantime, Titanic became entertainment. PBS and National Geographic showed documentaries about it. Museums mounted exhibits. Models, posters, and even board games turned up. Hollywood swooned. By 1997, James Cameron's blockbuster Titanic cemented the tale in epic romance, forever placing Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet into the ship's legend. Ballard was torn. Cameron's film put Titanic in front of millions, but it muddled the distinction between history and fiction. Ballard cautioned the public, "It's a grave, not a stage." But pop culture had taken Titanic. For years, Ballard allowed the glamorous account to remain. He was the hero, the discoverer, the man who introduced Titanic to the world. But as time went on, he owned up to the truth. The Titanic journey had been a cover story. He was surveying nuclear submarines for the Navy and Titanic had been his payoff. When he revealed this, reactions split. Some admired the brilliance of the arrangement, history and national security, both served. Others felt betrayed. They had believed in a story of pure science, not Cold War compromise. Ballard also admitted to what he refused to film. He steered clear of filming some sections where personal items, shoes, and even body parts revealed a gruesome tale. He thought filming them would desecrate the area. The critics charged that he sanitized reality for the cameras, altered history to keep up his heroic persona. Eventually, Ballard admitted he had mixed feelings. He had sought glory but opened up commercialization he could not contain. He described Titanic as sacred, but his own books and documentaries made money off it. He was both guardian and exploiter, scientist and sideshow barker, protector and profiteer. That contradiction became his legacy. By the end of the 1990s, Titanic was no longer simply a wreck. It was myth, film, and spectacle. Cameron's film became the biggest grossing in history. Traveling exhibitions of artifacts attracted millions. Museums exhibited jewelry, plates, even staircase parts of the ship. For many, these exhibitions were history made tangible. For Ballard, they were plunder. The paradox sharpened. His find immortalized Titanic, but also commodified it beyond all recognition. The wreck became a tourist site, a symbol of love and tragedy, a billion-dollar business. Ballard had unleashed a cultural monster bigger than he was. Right from the start, Ballard contended that Titanic must be left alone. For him, every 2 shoes on the ocean floor indicated a life cut short. To disturb the wreck was to dig in Arlington Cemetery. And the argument continues. Should Titanic be left as a consecrated tomb, or is it humankind's finest archaeological site? Pro-salvage advocates argue that recovering preserves history before the vessel rots. Opponents declare it to be exploitation. Ballard, caught in the middle between respect and narrative, became the wreck's strongest protector and one of its most polarizing figures. And this is where Robert Ballard's tale drops us, a man who uncovered the grave of Titanic to the world, then struggled with what that discovery unleashed. A man who made use of a Cold War deal to secure eternal renown. A man who demanded respect but could not curb the spectacle. Ballard showed us Titanic, but Ballard also showed us that history's most profound revelations are not easy. They are complex in hypocrisy, ambition, contradiction, and compromise. And as he eventually confessed, before his clock ran out, so is his own legacy haunted as the ship he discovered.